Let's be real. Holding employees accountable without turning into that boss who hovers over every little detail, it's not easy. Too much oversight and people shut down, too little and nothing gets done. So, how do you actually find balance where work gets done, expectations are clear, and your team doesn't feel smothered? That's exactly what we're going to talk about today. First, accountability isn't about control. It's about clarity. If people don't know exactly what you expect, you're setting them up for failure. And then you'll feel like you have to micromanage, which honestly is on you as the leader. Think about it like this. If you give somebody a puzzle, but you hide half the pieces, they're going to struggle. Same with work. Don't just say, hey, get me a report. Be specific. Instead, say, I need a weekly sales report that shows total revenue, top 5 accounts, and any of the deals that are at risk. Send it to me by Friday at noon so I can prep for the meeting on Monday. That's accountability. You're giving them the what, the when, and the why. Now they can own it and you won't have to hover. And big companies get this too. Take Toyota, for instance. Their production system is famous for the anding cord, a rope that any worker can pull to literally stop the production line if they spot a problem. But that only works because expectations are crystal clear. Everybody knows their responsibilities. Everybody has the authority to act. That's accountability without micromanaging. The manager doesn't need to hover over every single bolt that's being tightened because the system gives the employee the clarity and the ownership to get it right. But here's the thing. Sometimes the how actually does matter, especially when people are new or when the job has exact standards. Think about it like a new machine operator on the production floor. You can't just say, hey, make sure the parts are done by Friday. They need the step-by-step process. They need the safety checks. They need the quality standards. Same for an accountant learning how to close the books. If you don't walk them through the process, they're clearly going to miss critical steps. Early on, what some may think is micromanaging isn't micromanaging. It's training. But if you continue to do that, even when the employee's trained, that's when it becomes micromanaging. The problem is when a manager doesn't let go. If you're still walking your 5-year technician through how to troubleshoot a routine call, that's not accountability, it's babysitting. The shift is knowing when to move from here's how to here's what I need. This is exactly where a lot of people get stuck. I worked with a supervisor once that had a brand new customer service rep. At first, he sat in on the calls to coach, which was really great. But 6 months later, he was still sitting in, not to coach, but he didn't trust the rep to do it right. You can imagine how that turned out. The employee felt like a kid with their parent listening on every single conversation. Eventually, she left, not because she couldn't handle the work, but because she never felt ownership. That's the risk of holding on too long. Once expectations are set and the training wheels come off, the next key is how you stay involved. Don't confuse staying informed with micromanaging. Instead of popping by somebody's desk or blowing up their Teams chat every hour, set check-in points. For example, when a new rep is still learning, you might meet daily for a week just to keep them on track. But once they're comfortable, a weekly debrief is enough. Or think about engineers. You don't need a daily play-by-play. Agree on a mid-project review and a final review before delivery. That's plenty. You're in the loop without suffocating them. Now, let's talk about measuring results. Micromanagers love to count keystrokes. Real leaders care about outcomes. For a sales rep, don't obsess over how many calls they're making. Look at whether they're building real relationships and they're closing the deals. They could make 2 calls and close 2 deals, or they could make 40 calls and close 0 deals if they're not doing it well. So if you're focused on the amount of calls that they're making versus the amount of deals that they're actually closing, then that's micromanaging. You're not focused on the outcome, you're focused on what they're actually doing on a day-to-day basis. For an IT tech, don't measure how fast they close the tickets. Look at whether they're solving the root problem so the issue doesn't pop up again next week. The Ritz-Carlton is a perfect example of this. They don't just measure how quickly a phone is answered or how many guests get checked in per hour. They empower every employee from housekeeping to the front desk with up to $2,000 to solve guest problems on the spot. No approvals needed. That's not tracking activity, that's about outcomes. Did the guest leave happy? Did the issue get resolved? That level of trust really builds accountability because the employees know they're being judged on results, not how many boxes they checked. And here's the part that gets uncomfortable. Accountability also means addressing when somebody isn't meeting the expectations. Too many managers avoid this, hoping things magically improve, but it just makes the rest of the team lose respect. Accountability means calling it out without shame or blame. Instead of, you're screwing this up, try, hey, I noticed the project is running behind. Let's talk about what's getting in the way and how we get back on track. I've seen this play out with a delivery driver who's constantly late. At first, his manager assumed laziness, but when they finally had the conversation, they learned the route scheduling software wasn't accounting for traffic patterns. That's a fixable problem. On the flip side, if it had been a motivation issue, that conversation would have exposed it too. Either way, addressing it directly makes accountability real. And let's flip this around. Accountability doesn't just mean pointing out what's wrong. It also means acknowledging when people get it right. If your finance team busts it out to close the books early, call it out. If a field tech saves the company thousands by spotting an issue before it becomes a disaster, celebrate it. Accountability is about responsibility, and responsibility can be positive too. Here's where it gets fun. If you want employees to act like adults, you need to treat them like adults. That means giving them ownership. Instead of dictating every single step, ask, how do you plan to approach this? Let's say you've got an HR coordinator planning a company event. You could hand them a checklist and micromanage every detail, or you can give them a budget, the goals, and the must-haves, and then you can let them own it. Most of the time, they're going to surprise you in a really good way. Same with technicians. Instead of telling them exactly how to troubleshoot every single job, set the outcome and let them figure out the process. Southwest Airlines is a perfect example of this. They gave their flight attendants permission to have fun with the standard safety announcements. The message is clear and compliant. The seatbelt's still buckled, the exits are still in the same place, but how they deliver it is theirs. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's playful, sometimes it's heartfelt. Passengers remember it, and it sets Southwest apart, and employees feel trusted to use their own voice. That's ownership in action. I've seen whole teams transform when managers step back just enough. Suddenly, employees are solving problems you didn't even know existed, and they're proud because it's their work, not just your checklist. One sales manager I knew used to script out exactly what his reps should say on every single call. His team hated it, and results were flat. When he stopped dictating and started saying, hey, here's the target, how would you approach this customer? His reps started closing more deals, not because he had less control, but because they had more ownership. To hold people accountable without micromanaging, it really comes down to this. Be crystal clear on expectations, know when to teach and when to step back, agree on checkpoints instead of constant check-ins, measure outcomes instead of activity, address issues directly but respectfully, and give people real ownership of their work. That's the sweet spot. Your employees will feel trusted and you will still know work is getting done. If this video hit home for you, drop a comment below. Let me know what's one accountability move that's worked for you as a manager. And if you want more straight talk tips on leadership, HR, and managing people without losing your mind, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks. Bye.